welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael, and tonight, I know it's daylight on here, and so let me preface this by saying we are actually pre-recording this on an afternoon, but it will be airing live at night, so that's why I said at night, even though it looks daytime, so don't be confused. But with that being said, I am so excited to be bringing you all this episode. And we were talking backstage, and we're like, this is 2 years in the making, this episode. So you guys are in for a huge treat because I am so happy to introduce my guest who I was on his show, and that's how we met 2 years ago, and have been great friends since. So here's my pleasure and my honor to introduce you all to the one, the only podcast extraordinaire, Terry Crozier.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm doing great. Welcome to the show. Hey, and special Mike, welcome having me on the show, man. I appreciate it, man. Let's do this thing. Let's have some fun. Let's educate.
Yes, and what's really funny is we both were talking about the episode, and Terry goes to me and says, man, when I did your episode, I was such a greenhorn as a host. And I was like, really? I thought you were like, had a lot of episodes underneath you. And I said, I was a greenhorn as a guest. And he was like, really? So we both were laughing over how we both thought we were more experienced than we were. So obviously did really well.
Yes, I mean, it was that, and I think that night, dude, it set the foundation for how I wanted my podcast to be, and I've stuck to it. That foundation, and I have not left it. And I'm just going to continue building on it and see where it takes me, man. I mean, I'm just a small guy in a small town in a big world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where uh, I was sitting, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, and I was sitting on the toilet, and I'm like, well, hell, dude, there, I don't. There's no podcasters. Nobody's out there at the time, Mike. I really didn't know anything about podcasting because I really didn't watch any of the YouTube channels about paranormal podcasting and all that stuff. So I'm sitting there. I'm like, man, how can I bring knowledge to the world? And I'm like, well, Terry, why not become a podcaster? And it hit me, man. I started spending a lot of money on equipment and laptops and stuff, trying to find the right fit on how I really want to do this. But in the meantime, I'm out there investigating to the world, and trying to get my foot ground on that area also. But I'm like, do I have this? Is this the right way that I really want to do it? And, ever since I talked to you, I've had that foundation and I've stuck with that foundation. And I don't think I will ever leave that foundation. So, hey, thanks to you for helping
Aw.
me become the podcaster that I want to be.
Well, I feel like turnabout is fair play. So thank you for that. And I have to be honest, Harry, being on your show, I think was the most I've laughed during an interview and had so much fun that I was like, if these are what interviews are like, this is what I want to do. These are the ones I want to do. And so I was looking, and I've done over 30 interviews, and the ones that stick in my mind the most are the ones like yours, where we just sit back, have fun, and I gotta admit, I think that kind of rubbed off on me too, and so I try to do that in my shows and make them light and get the information across and serious when need to be, but also, leave room for the laughter.
You know, who says that you can't educate and have a good time all at the same time? Uh, when
Modern education system.
Yeah, but I'm not with. Hey, I'm old school, and I believe when teachers are in my era was teaching us, they uh they made it interesting.
They did.
You know, it was it was an education thing to, you know, to make kids think and to make them wonder and to make them laugh, because when you're educating someone, it don't always have to be serious, you know, and that's what keeps the kids' attentions going, unlike today. You know, everything's iPhone and iPads and everything. You know, they're taking the fun out of education, and that's the way I like to do it, man. I mean, every time I have a podcast or I invite someone, I keep it interesting, I keep it laughing, and the great thing about it, Mike, I keep them guessing. You know, because my podcast is a podcast that definitely make you think. I'm not going to ask you all the questions that you've been asking for years. I mean, at some point, as a podcaster, you got to think outside the box. Just like you're a paranormal investigator, you got to think outside the box. You know, you can't keep asking the same questions because there's too many questions out there that needs to be answered that we've yet to, we've yet to ask, and there's questions out there that yet to be answered. So, you know, it's just one of those things, man, that you got to keep your guests laughing, you got to keep them
Yeah.
wondering, and you got to, and you got to educate, whether it's back and forth, that's just me. I mean,
And on that note, I had a guest on that I had to reschedule due to a family emergency. And when I had him back on and we rescheduled and everything, we were talking and, sharing, the usual information about paranormal stuff and everything. And something in my mind clicked and said, wait a minute, s- you know, where's the fun? I guess is what was in my mind. And so I somehow got onto and I go, so I have a question for you. I guarantee you've never been asked. And he laughed and he's like, oh, I've been asked everything. Hit me
mm.
with it. And I said to him, so do you prefer cake or pie? And he sat there and was like, he does a double take and he goes, my God, you're right. I have never been asked that. And I have to actually think about that.
Oh
And
man.
I was like, yeah, I was like, and so yeah, there are shows where I'll randomly like throw out something like that, and it's like I don't know where it comes from, but it's like apparently it's perfect for the moment because even like you were laughing. I mean, I'm hoping that everybody that goes back and watches that episode sits there and gets to that moment, and it's like, oh my God, this is like podcast gold right here.
I mean, there's people out there, man. They say they've been asked every question imaginable, but dude, come on now. There's some questions that I know that people have not even thought about asking. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
you can sit there and it's like, man, okay, I know what this guy is about to say. I know what that guy's about to say, and then you hit them with a question, and then they're like, they'll pull that Arsenio Hall moment on you, and they'll go like this and say, I don't think nobody's ever asked me that question before. Then they'll go into deep thought on how to answer that question.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if you know the answer, I mean, if someone had asked you that question already, then you should know the answer to it. But most likely, nah. I mean, it never happens.
Yeah,
Never
and
happens.
I had a guest on one of my shows, and I had decided to throw the podcast playbook out, which meant no questions pre-written for the episode.
Hmm.
And he's sitting there talking, and he's sharing something. And I go, and when it was my turn to ask the question, I go, you had just mentioned this, and I'm curious, and I phrased a question around it. And he's got a moment where he's looking on the screen like, uh-huh, and goes, I'm glad you asked that. Let me, it's more this, and this. And when it was done and over, when we were backstage, he goes, thank you for asking me the questions you did, because nobody ever allows me to go deeper on those subject matters. So
Oh,
thank you
wow.
for doing that. And I was like, yes, because I threw out the questions.
Yeah.
Uh,
The thing about being a podcaster, Mike, is have you ever had this? I'm pretty sure you have. You got a guest that's coming on the show, and you're looking forward to it, but you get this memo, and they're asking you. I mean, the memo is about a little paragraph long, and they want you to give you all the questions that you're going to ask them on the podcast show. And I'm like, what the hell, dude? I can't do that. I don't know all the questions that I'm going to ask you because at some point you have to start thinking outside the box. When you start thinking outside the box, when it comes to asking your guest that comes on your show, you can throw every question that you thought about in your past podcast, just throw those out the window. And everything that you ask is coming from here. And everything that you want to ask is basically scientific based or, and you just go with the flow. I mean, there is no way I can give anybody a, you know, 15, 20, maybe 25 questionnaire on what I'm going to ask them, because I really don't know.
right. And especially when they're in like three or four fields within one field, it's like, well, we could go this route, we could go that route. I'm not sure where you're going, so
Right?
I can't. I'm not going to sideline you to get my question across. And I had one guest who uh, his deal came with a whole bunch of promo stuff, like a write up on them and topics and everything. And I was talking to him before we went on, and I was like, "Oh, so am I supposed to use all these talking points for the interview?" And the guy laughed at. He goes, "No, don't limit it to that. That's just suggestions." And I was like, "Oh, okay, good. Okay, put it to the side." And I
There
was
you
like,
go.
"All right, going back to my style," because I was like, "This is going to be awkward if I'm sitting here doing a checklist of all these points." And I think you and I kind of had the same style, and I think people appreciate it. Is we want, when we ask you to be a guest, you to share your experiences, your stories, whatever you want to share. It's your space. And it always
Mhm.
cracks me up when I'll say, when I, first set up the interview, I'm like, yeah, this could be months ahead, but, I want to promote you. And they're like, great. I'd love that. You're wanting to do that. Cool. And then when it gets closer to, they're like, so what topic are we discussing? And I'm like, how do I know? I'm like, this is your, and I'll say to him, I'm like, to be honest, I
Oh
set
my
this up
god.
space for you to talk about whatever you want. And they're like, oh, great. Well, I'm wanting to go here and here. Great. We can do that.
We
And so, yeah, I'm feeling like you probably are the same way where people are like, so
oh
what are we
yeah.
talking about? And you're like, I don't know.
Well, the thing about my podcast is I try to keep it now. The square box. I always keep it in a square box Bec- because when we dealing with parapsychology, anybody that investigating the paranormal, there's so many different aspect to it. You got the paranormal aspect, you got the psychology aspect, you got the religion aspect, and you have the
Experiential.
yeah, the experience or educational aspect of it. So I try to jump in each one of those sides, so to make sure I don't lose anything, make sure everything is all the questions in each corner of the box is checked off and answered, and and just be ready, and just try to ask different types of questions, because if trust me, as a guest on the podcast, and if you do it basically on to the guest, they'll talk about the same thing forever.
Yeah.
And and I can't do that. One, because my audience will get bored, and if the audience get bored, then you're gonna have to change. Not well, you then have to tweak some things while you're sitting there talking to the individual. Sometimes I let the guest take the show. What they're about, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and so on and so on. But at some point, you got to take control of the podcast, and then you just got to start hitting each corner. And that's where you're able to understand on what this on God bucket on what this understand on what this paranormal team, where they're heading, where they're going, where they've been. You kind of have an idea on their identity, and you be able to figure things out for them, educate them on some things that they're not, hipped on when it comes to paranormal investigation. How they investigate, why they investigate, and so on and so on. The scientific aspect of investigations, the parapsychology of it. You want to be able to hit all those within the certain time limit that you're on the podcast. If not, the podcast, like you say, you just be answering the same old questions over and over again. And at that point, nobody's learning. Your guests or quiet because they see that, well, this person is talking about the same old. It's no fun. There's no
Right.
laughter into that.
And I think you and I probably would agree, though, there is a difference between podcast hosts and regular conversation people. Is when we get a guest who is like, you ask them a question like, what is this topic that you're about? And they spend like 15 minutes on it. You're like, this is podcast gold because I don't have to sit here and think about this, and this. They got everyone captivated explaining
Right?
this. And then it's like you get great questions out of that. And it's like everyone's like, they did so much, your guest did so much talking. You hardly got a word in. And I'm like, I smile. I'm like, those are the best episodes ever. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's like
Uh,
I'm on vacation.
yeah. I actually had a guy that came, he was in New Jersey. And what's so weird about him? And what's so cool about him, I'm not going to say weird because they do things outside the box. As far as, their scientific methods when they investigate. Um this guy had a degree in science, something else. The team was called United Scientific, dude, and they were heavily funded by I can't think of the name of that university. And dude, he had everything on point on what he wanted to talk about. Mike, I'm kidding, dude. I literally sat back and just listen, watch this guy talk, educate. Man,
Yeah.
I thought, hey, he'd be a good moderator for somebody because this guy was bam, 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 bam. And I'm like, wow. I think the whole time that I think the podcast maybe lasted maybe like an hour and 20 minutes. Hell, I probably asked 3 questions the whole damn time he was talking.
Yeah.
And that was perfect for me because
Yeah.
every question that I wanted to ask, it seemed like he read my mind because he was asking them in sequence on what need to be asked and so on. Dude, the guy was a freaking ace in the hole. I definitely give him credit. Ain't too many people that can do that, but he had his ducks lined up in a row.
Yeah. And I think you'll also agree, like, my second favorite type of interviews is where the guest may be sharing a bunch of short answers. So you have to come up with more questions. But in those short answers, they're talking about a topic and then they jump to another part of that topic. And you're like, and they go, "So what's your question?" You're like, "You just answered my next question. You gotta give me a second to think of here
Yeah,
first
think about it.
because you like totally jumped into my next question and answered it." And they'll laugh and they're like, "Oh, well, I'm glad I was able to do that." And it's like those are the other type of interviews that I find the most entertaining is because it's like you got to really be on your toes because it's
Yeah.
like, wait, they're answering several questions in one, so it's like you got to pay attention.
hmm the one thing that as a podcaster, you really and this is something that I do on the norm. Actually, I got a podcast coming up October 5th. A lot of podcasters need to expand. When I mean expand, they need to uh, how can I say it? They need to share events. Okay, like for an example, I got a Universal podcast show coming up October 5th. Uh, this Universal podcast show is bringing some of the, how can I say it? It's actually bringing some of the paranormal, I'm not going to say greatest minds, I'm going to call them some of the greatest wonders because a lot of people wonder about them. So I'm actually bringing together a medium, a demonologist, a priest, a skeptic. We're all going to come together, sit down at the table, and have a conversation. Now, can you imagine a podcast like that and how explosive it has its potential? Because some of these guys, oh, mind you, and a witch. Some of these guys don't actually see eye to eye. A true skeptic really don't see eye to eye with any of the other four.
Right.
So it's going to have its potential to be exciting, but yet explosive because the different ways that these each individuals think. When you bring a priest on, and I'm not talking just a priest, Mike, that priest that a paranormal investigator, because we have those too. We have a priest that also is a paranormal investigator, but w- that type of priest doesn't fit into the narrative. You know what I'm saying? So we got to have a priest out there that's actually uh, voices his opinion on his ways of thinking about the paranormal. A witch, their ways, a skeptic, definitely, a psychic or a medium, their ways of the way that they think. You got to remember, three of these guys believe in the paranormal. Two of them don't. The third one was a witch. You really, if you have not communicated with the Wiccan or somebody that dabbles in witchery, you really don't know what they're about, because the witch community it's like where we should be as paranormal investigators. It should be a tight knit family, but
Right.
we're not. So having all those guys together, man, uh, it's going to be something exciting.
Yeah,
And
and I was gonna say is, it's interesting you bring the witch factor in because you could do a show just on the Wiccans and the witches because there's the gray, there's the white, there's yellow,
mhm,
there's different levels and different followings. So even that would be like an interesting panel type sit down to go, yeah, what are you guys about and where are you different? But the hard thing when I do panels or go on panel shows is as the moderator or podcast host, so to speak, is making sure everyone keeps it civil and
mhm.
polite and not like rude and obnoxious or, keeping it in somewhat the terms of, yes, I want you freely to say what you're going to say, but at the same time, you have to be respectful of other people's beliefs. And if you're not,
Exactly.
then we got an issue right
Got-
now.
And what really, and I'm glad you mentioned that. And then you dealing with four different guests on your podcast show. You have to share the love with everybody because, mind you, the way that the StreamYard and other platforms are set up, each one of these teams can add their members to the show. So not only are you dealing with your guest, you have to deal with each one of the other individuals' guests that are asking specific questions, and you got to keep them happy and entertained. So it definitely takes on a big responsibility when you're able to have something that big and something, it's not really complex, but you just got to be mindful on certain things that you have to vision on, because if you pay more attention to one or the other, it's going to get boring for the guests on that particular platform that's representing that particular individual. So it might not seem like a lot, but dude, it is. Trust me, you go to bed scratching. You see, I ain't got no hair on my head. You know, I used to do this when I first did this, Mike. I did the Texas Four Corners podcast. I did that every 3 months. So paranormal investigators from each corner of our state can come on the platform, represent their area, and get a chance to get their name. They get notarized, and all that stuff. And I actually was giving gifts away on that platform. But the craziest thing is, and I'm gonna tell you just how twisted, para unity can be. As much as I preach it, and much as I would like to have, para unity, uh, there is, if there's an upside to it, there's a downside to it. But I come to find out is teams were getting mad because, from different regions, you know, you got teams in Houston. Well, if you come on the show and put your name in the box, you get a chance to represent the East Texas. I don't care if you from Lufkin, Jacksonville, East Texas, Beaumont, all that's considered East Texas. And it might be a little bit farther east, but it's all considered East Texas. Now, the thing is, when I advertise for this event, and if you think you're one of those investigators or paranormal team that can be suitable, put your name in the box, come on the pod show, and put your name in the drawing. Now, just because you don't do that, you can't get mad at the other teams. It's your fault you didn't put your name in the drawing.
Right.
You can't get mad at the other team that got selected and representing you and your area. Hell, you're going to get in a fight with these guys because you didn't do what you needed to do. You know what I'm saying?
And it's kind of funny that you put Houston in East because I would put it in the South.
Oh man, yeah.
Gulf. So
Well, the thing with I would, when we talk South Texas, man, I'm talking RGV, Laredo, all those things that are south, just a little bit north of Mexico. Now, when I said East Texas, anything past anything just a little bit. Oh man, give me a town.
Tyler.
No, well, Tyler, yeah, well, Tyler. Well, I'm talking about like southeast. There's got to be a town right there.
Nacogdoches.
No,
Port Arthur.
well, yeah, that's deep east. But I'm talking about southeast. It's got to be a cutoff. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm saying southeast. I'm talking about northeast, if I'm right. Anything east of, well, hell, I don't know. I'm trying to figure this out, dude. Texas is, I mean, there's got to be a point off anyway.
Yeah.
But I try to put all those teams together. And mind you, Houston is what? The third biggest city in the country?
Yeah.
So you're not going to get every team. But if I'm advertising on 50 different Facebook groups in East Texas, and you get the opportunity to see the advertising for the event, and for some weird reason you don't you don't do the reach out and contact and try to get on the podcast, there's nobody's fault.
Yeah.
So why are you trying to come after this other team that name got drawn and they got the opportunity to represent their city and East Texas? Don't threaten people just because you didn't do what you needed to do. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I quit doing that. Because people, I was getting to a point to where, okay, dude, at this point, it's not that serious. People don't have to threaten other people, in order for you guys. It's not that serious being on the show. There's other shows like this, so it doesn't have to be that serious.
Right. And one of the things that was funny is when I first started, I was, I had a symbol of para-unity on my background, and everybody would look, and some of the guests would be like, "You're about para-unity?" "Yeah." "Oh, okay." And finally I said to one of the guests said to me, why do you keep talking about para-unity, because that has such a low integrity to it. And I said, well, then I'm going to use my light and my integrity to maybe take that dim lit para-unity marker out there and take and rub a little bit of that grime off and, bring some luster back to it. And
there you go.
People were like, that was so cool how you answered that. And I was like, yeah, because I acknowledge, yeah, there is bad connotation to it, but we can move beyond it. We can rise above it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, Mike, there's bad connotations in every profession.
Yeah.
If you see, and the one thing about it is because we don't delve in it more than most people, uh, you know, cryptozoologists. I'm pretty sure there's bad connotations in that. There's
Oh yeah.
competitions and every level of science. Who's to say that a an archaeologist doesn't have their moments? Who's to say that other people, ufologists don't have their moments? Dude, I was at the Lone Star Paracon last year, and I got attacked by a what is those people? A Newfound lady, and
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, what the hell is this about? I Mike, I'm doing what everybody else is doing. I got my camera out. I'm recording the whole activity that's going on. And so I walked around and she's, oh, don't put that in my face. I like, what are you afraid of? I'm doing what everybody else is doing. Now, I don't know if she just came at me for that specific reason, but I'm like, no, I'm not going to put my camera down because you want me to. You are with a well known organization nationwide. You know, uh, freaking MUFON? Are you serious? This is how you represent MUFON? Dude, I need to turn you in because the way you're coming at me, and then she walked around the table. I didn't know what to do. I mean, because I've never had anybody come at me like that. And damn show, if she would have came at everybody else that had a camera in their hand, dude, she would have got kicked out because I just felt like she was picking at me at the time.
Yeah.
And so I know there's just not, para unity. I know there's other kind of stuff that's going on in different organizations and different things that are going on in the world. The only thing is, we just don't hear about it.
Right. And I want to take a moment because have hit on, you know, staying, like you reference it as staying in a box on your show and everything. And I want to take a moment and just see, what is your definition of paranormal? What is the paranormal field to you? Like, what topics?
As a paranormal investigator, and I hear this all the time, there's the paranormal field is a vast area. It's like a black hole. You go through that hole and no telling where it's gonna end, where you're gonna end up. And I've my feelings, and as far as a paranormal investigator, and what I think, uh, of course, you got to go scientific first. Scientific is the forefront. It should be the forefront of every paranormal investigator. And just be scientific about everything. Uh, do your research, do your history. Pretty much the same thing that everybody else is doing. I'm pretty much the same way. Only difference is I'll dive into the scientific community a little bit more than others. Because there is so much going on in the world, Mike. And at what point will the scientific community uh, will be able to all of us just come together and be able to figure out that one big question: is there anything out there? And that's how I view it. My investigations philosophy might be a little bit unorthodox compared to others. My devices might be a little bit unusual to others, but it always comes back to the scientific aspect of an investigation.
And I appreciate that. And for me, my awakening moment was last year. I was doing articles for an online newsletter, and I could write any topics I wanted. And, I was like, so I'm sitting there thinking, and one of them was, I think it was my second one, was what is the paranormal? Because a lot of people always will say to you, "Oh, you're a paranormal investigator. What or you're into the paranormal. What do you study? What is that?" And so in writing this article and citing so many different sources and definitions and everything, I remember going and saying, like, the bottom commonality line is the paranormal is defined as anything unexplained. And my mind just went boom. And my shows were like, all right, the whole world is our oyster now because paranormal has been defined as unexplained. So I was like, portals, stargates, UFOs, star beams, all these different topics that are out there, but nobody wants to get into. I was
Right.
like, folks, these are paranormal topics.
Well, we wasn't always called paranormal investigators, Mike. At one point, uh, we were called something else. We were called something simple. Uh, because let's do a little history lesson here. Uh, Back when the Catholic Church sent out its first supposedly paranormal investigator, he wasn't called a paranormal investigator. He was just, he was just called a investigator. The P word. I don't even think they even knew what the hell a paranormal investigator was. They just called a paranormal investigator or a monk or whoever that they decide to send out to go investigate unknown, phenomenon in the world, because that's what the Catholic Church did. I think
Right.
these guys were the first ones to send investigators out to try to understand unknown phenomenon, or or something that somebody's seen and they cannot explain. So, well, with that said, we were just called investigators.
That's true. And the other thing too is I don't know where the schism came from, but people were like, if you mentioned the word angel, they were like, that's not paranormal, that's supernatural. And I'm like, supernatural is paranormal. Paranormal is supernatural. These are not different realms, but yet somehow we schismed even that. And it's like, for some reason, we like to take things and go, okay, this is in this box. This is in this box. This is this box.
Hmm.
Well, all these boxes can't be in one box. It's like, why?
Well,
And
yeah,
so that's where I get a lot of people give me looks, is because I'm like, somebody like said to me, so you think angels are paranormal? I'm like, well, yeah, because they could be divine being, they could be a star being, they could be an alien being,
yeah,
and it's I can't explain what they are. Therefore, to me, it's a paranormal topic.
right.
And they
You know,
go, but it's supernatural. I'm like, well, the supernatural to me is unexplainable, which means it's paranormal by, again, the definition of unexplained. And they're like, okay, I can't argue anymore with that. But it's like,
the one thing, the one thing when people ask me that question, and and I try to keep it to them simple as this. Um, you remember those little, I don't know, Swedish dolls, when you put one big doll, then you turn around and put another medium doll, a small
Oh,
doll
the
and a
Russian dolls.
yeah. I
Yeah.
thought they were Swedish. I try to compare the paranormal feel like that. You got one big doll, and everything else fits into it, all the way down to the bottom to the smallest doll. And it can't get no simplified than that.
Right.
You know, you got different types of uh, you know, things that are going on, different types of names, like you were saying, but it all fits in one big doll. Would you agree?
I agree, and that's where I think a lot of us as investigators need to kind of, redefine ourselves, because if you're going to be a paranormal investigator who strictly does haunted locations looking for ghosts, then you need, in my opinion, say, yeah, I'm a paranormal investigator that focuses on this. And not just say, yeah, I'm a paranormal investigator.
Now,
Because to me, you're not a full investigator. You're just you're investigating one little niche of the
right,
whole spectrum. And so if we're gonna call ourselves paranormal investigators, I feel like, to me, we need to be open to investigate the whole spectrum, not
right.
just one part.
And Mike, and you made a good point because as I get older, we get older, we see things in a different aspect. Now, as time goes on, and believe it or not, I mean, you might not agree with me on this, but I definitely see the whole ghost hunter paranormal investigator uh, end up breaking up into two, because a ghost hunter is just going to go out and hunt for ghosts. They're not going to go and, they go and communicate, but they're not doing the research to like the paranormal investigator would do. We're going to go into a location. We're going to investigate and find out what the true cause of the haunting is. A ghost hunter, only thing they're going to do is just go ghost hunt. They're not going. I mean, they might try to validate something or something's there, but are they really going to go do the research, ask the specific questions that need to be asked, and so on and so on? Unlike a paranormal investigator might do. A paranormal investigator might come in a little bit more organized, a little bit more skilled, and a little bit more seasoned. But a ghost hunter, basically, all you need is this, and you go find your haunted location, go ghost hunt.
Yeah, and
That's like
you
that.
you probably will agree. I think you'll agree with me. Is even the term ghost hunting is going to change, because right now it's like when you talk to someone and you say the term ghost hunting, people go and say, "Oh, so you take traps and you actually hunt for this ghost?" And it's like, no, no, I don't. And I'm like, that's not what ghost hunting is. And so I feel like even that nomenclature is going to undergo some changes, because people are starting to associate ghost hunting with ghost busters, busting ghosts.
Right.
And it's
Ghosting
like, yeah,
goes.
we're not sitting there throwing traps out, catching anything. We're not actually hunting anything to catch it. And so, you know, to be honest, I'm not even sure what term they're going to come up with. But yeah, I even feel like ghost hunting is going to fall to the wayside, because it confuses too many people.
Definitely. Not only that, I think it confuses when you look at ghost hunting, it sometimes I think I like that's the difference between the two. A ghost hunter and a paranormal investigator. Let's say, for an example, you're sitting up at a store. you see this priest come into the door, and he comes in, and you got your little things, your outfit, and you about to go on a vacation. You got all your logos, you ready to go. Oh, and he says, "Oh yeah, hey, I see what you got on your shirt. You're a ghost hunter, huh?" I can almost guarantee you, his reaction is going to be a little bit different than, for an example, you have paranormal investigator on your shirt.
Right.
He might look at it as a profession, that what you're doing, compared to just going out to the graveyard and ghost hunting. So at some point, is and I'll be honest with you, Mike. You might think, yeah, I'm about to open up a debate here with you. Uh, it's going to get to a point where you can put urban explorers and ghost hunters into the same category. You can put them together and say, hey, you guys are not the same, but you guys are a step or two away from being the same type of individuals compared to a paranormal investigators. Because what a urban explorer does and what a ghost hunter does is pretty much the same thing.
I actually do classify them as the same thing. Because for that very reason, a ghost hunter goes into a location, tries to get evidence of the ghost just being there, a door moving or a sound, and then they leave. That's it. They're like, so yes, this place is haunted. Well, one, they didn't do any, in my opinion, they don't do anything to, I'm trying to think of the word, where we try to prove what happened, like, or disprove what happened. They don't do, can't think of that word, but they don't undergo the process of, can I replicate? Can I, can they make that sound again? Was it a fluke sound?
Right. And and the thing about and I have nothing against either of the two. Actually, a urbanite can, what they do is they just basically go into a location and photograph this, photograph that. That's why I was saying is uh, they're not too much apart. They may be a couple footsteps away from each other. I mean, but there is a difference between the two. So a urbanite goes in and does whatever he does, and he might not try to capture a ghost intentionally, and but he does go into certain locations and do what they do, and ghost uh, ghost hunters, they do the same thing. And mind you, the reason why people use ghost hunters is because of what is going on in Hollywood.
Right.
When ghost hunters start did the ghost hunters, next thing you know, everybody's using the word ghost hunters. If you guys actually want to be professionals, like you say you are, or that you want to be, let's use the word investigator, investigations, something to that term compared to ghost hunters. Because if you're a ghost hunter, that's what you're going to be labeled as. And some people don't like that terminology. Some people might think that, well, these guys are ghost hunters, man. They go in locations, cause raise hell, and so on and so on. They're not really professionals, which I'm not saying that all ghost hunters aren't professional. I'm just saying is you get that stereotype of that name, and you are automatically, you're going to fall down into that until you prove yourself otherwise, or you change your name, and and so on and so on.
Right. And maybe you'll agree with me is, like I was saying, the nomenclature is going to change. Is maybe instead of calling themselves ghost hunters, call them ghost seekers, because that's really what they're doing is seeking if there's a ghost.
Yeah, seeking. I mean, that sounds perfect.
Yeah,
That.
and I think another point too that I think needs to be made, in all fairness to the urban explorers, and I'm not bunching them all together, but the ones that I know, their objective is they're going to locations that are abandoned to tell the story, to keep the
Hmm.
history of that and the knowledge of that location alive. And so that is an important deal that I feel like needs to be done, but it needs to be done right. I can tell you, as a paranormal investigator, it irks me when I go and I will contact the location and be like, hey, I'd like to investigate there. And their answer is, we don't do that because we've had so many people trespassing that we're not opening up for that. And I'm like, yeah, you urban explorers going places illegally is really hurting the paranormal field because you guys are pissing people off and making it extra hard for us to get permission to go places. And I feel like a lot of people also, view us as them and are like, oh,
Hmm.
well, you guys are paranormal investigators. You go to all these locations and did you ever get, they don't stop to say, did you get permission? They're like, you just go. I'm like, well, no, we got permission
Hmm.
if you do it right. And I know there are some paranormal investigators who will see a abandoned building on the side and go, oh, I bet that's haunted. Let's go check it out. Jump a fence, go check it out. And I'm like, you can't do that. You
Yeah.
got to at least document that you tried to get a hold of someone. And a great source of that is, and I know this is going to sound strange, but notify the local police and say,
Mhm.
hey,
Oh.
I want to investigate this spot. Do you know who owns it? Or, if they're allowing that. And they may
Yep.
be like, no, we don't know who owns it, or I don't know about that, but at least they're knowing you're above board and you're not going in just to take something from the side or go in and make some crazy film and being like, oh, I got a 15-second TikTok video that's going to go viral because look at what stupid thing we did here.
Right. It's yeah, man. Mike, how do you think? Let me ask you a question. How do you think paranormal investigations would be without social media? I mean, social media has been around since, man, I remember late 90s when I first went to 7-Eleven and I got my AOL disc and I was able to log on to my computer with the disc and get online. But now, dude, I mean, could paranormal investigators survive doing what we do without social media?
I feel like we could and we would, and it would probably be more validating because we would be sitting there presenting our evidence and our, video investigation of what we witnessed and what happened in a medium that would probably become known as the social media because we would have sites where you would say, okay, put your evidence here. And people would post, here's my video of this location. Here's my video of this location. And it gets reviewed, and people are like, yeah, this isn't someone with a string and you can see their hand go like this and the door
Right.
opens and going, oh my God, the door opened. It's like, no, it would be so much harder to fake the evidence.
Hmm.
And when it comes to that, is I had one person ask me on an interview and they go, I noticed you don't edit any of your videos. Why is it? I said, because I don't want people to think I fake anything, because having the real experience is so much cooler than you could fake it. And so, yeah, I would have like a 4-hour YouTube video of just
Right.
watching the entire investigation unfold. And to me, that is partly the downfall of the TV shows. Is as much as, we want to say about the shows hurting the field, when Ghost Hunters first came out, I gave a lot of kudos to them because they would say day 1, day 2, day 4, evidence review night before, disclosing, or day trip to the historical society to get information. And they were documenting this was not a 1 day,
Right.
few hour episode filmed, got all this evidence, moved on. They showed the path of how they gathered all this evidence, how they gathered all this footage, and how much footage was scrapped, and then they would reveal a little snippet of what they found to the owners. And
Right.
I thought
Right.
that was great. And then they started doing, oh, we're at location. You see them walking around buildings, and then they're like, okay, here's what we found. And you're like, wait, how many days were you there? Who did you go to talk to about, anything? And it's like, and so people now have the connotation of, you go there, you get what you get that night, you go home, you got a whole TV episode. And it's
Hmm.
like, no, it's not like that.
But I kind of can't help but wonder sometimes, Mike, about ghost hunters. When they get these residential cases, and I can't help but think that they actually don't show the true uh, location. I mean, me personally, and I will do the same thing for protection of my client. I would have to show another house because sometimes you see a location, they go do this, they'll show the house, then you'll see them knocking on the door. Now, the same house, when they walk up the stairs, doesn't actually look like it belongs to the house. So I think sometimes that they might show a house, but don't actually show the house. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
It's
and some of it too, I think, is like, and I don't know if this is verbatim true or not. This is my opinion. But when you see evidence where they're showing the footage and like a door closes behind them, and their reaction is like, "Oh my God, did you see that?" It seems like there's a second or a moment displacement where it's like, okay, so maybe the door closing happened and it wasn't on footage. So
hmm
they were like, let's go back and recreate it, and we'll put their reaction to the recreation to make it look like this actually happened. So it makes sense why they're reacting the way they're reacting. And so, yes, in a way, they're faking evidence, but they're not really faking because it's what happened. We don't always catch what
okay.
happened on
Right.
film. And so I think that's where some of it comes into play too, is everybody sees them doing that and goes, oh, I can fake it because they do. When I don't think they're really, their purpose is faking it. I think their
Hmm.
purpose is to show you what they witnessed when it wasn't caught on camera by accident, because let's be honest, as paranormal investigators, 9 out of 10 things we experience are always off camera because we
Exactly.
can't have 24/7 coverage everywhere.
The biggest concerns, and I'm going to be honest with you, when I saw the St. Augustine episode, that was my biggest concern about ghost hunters. And they're, at that point, I think they were, fighting for ratings and views. And I'm being honest with you, I thought they faked that whole damn episode. About going up the stairs and seeing somebody looking over you. I mean, I can easily duplicate everything that they done in that episode, and it's not really hard to do.
Yeah.
So, for them, and what's so crazy about it, I don't even think that they ever went back to that location. I'm not sure if they did. I don't think they did. So it was a pretty much one and done on that. And
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that episode like shortly before the Ghost Hunters show split and went off air for like a season or two? And
uh,
I feel like that's because a lot of them were getting tired of the same old, routine. We're doing this, we're doing that. And I feel like there was a rub that came up between Grant and the other host. His name escapes me right now. But they, you know, the two alphas, don't always get along. And one wanted to go one way, another wanted to go another way. And what was interesting is when they decided to come back after being gone for a while, you had Ghost Nation and then you had Ghost Hunters. And Grant was with the Ghost Hunters, and the show was doing, like, I felt like actual investigations again and going through with the new team, starting from scratch, what got them famous from the get go. Well, Grant ends up walking away from it and they do a season by themselves. And then they're like, no, we're done. We did this. And Ghost Nation disappears and Taps comes back as Ghost Hunters return. And it's like they pick up the mantle of the show and take and go. But to me, it's interesting how they had different shows doing different things, even though they were technically the same group.
right.
And so I feel like that's partly why Ghost Hunters disappeared, was because they wanted to go separate ways. And then they found out we can't really go separate ways because they end up competing against each other on network times, and the networks pit them against each other. And it's like, yeah, nobody's going to win this. So they're like, let's just give up and merge back to one. But what was interesting is I noticed with the new squad versus the original squad,
Mm-hmm.
there was far less of the quote, oh my God, did you hear that? Or did you see that? Like the dramatic expressions
Right.
coming through.
It wasn't that much fear factor. It wasn't that much. They didn't put that much fear factor into it. You
Yeah.
know, that make you, oh, you see that and make your hair raises up on your arms. It wasn't none of that at all. And I guess that's why I saw myself drawn to that particular show than the other one that was out there. And dude,
But to me, the one show that I give a lot of credence to, and I'm sorry is not on the air because I felt like, as much as dramatic as it was for entertainment purposes, it was a really interesting theory and experiment, and that it was they're known as Project Fear now, but Fear, what was it? Destination Fear.
that's that fair.
Dakota and his friends and his
Hmm.
sister. And the reason why I say this is because on one episode, Dakota goes, "If there's a spirit in here, can you make a noise?" It makes a noise. They all run out of the building. And then he's like, "Yeah, we need to go back in." And they go back in, and Dakota says, "Spirit, I have to apologize to you. We asked you for a sound, you gave it to us. We apologize, we ran out. Could you do it again?" To me, that put them on a level above all the rest because they owned how they, reacted,
Hmm.
just like anybody else probably would have reacted, but they acknowledged, hey, we asked, you delivered. We're the ones who screwed up by running out,
Yeah,
not you.
that spirit is probably where in the hell y'all going? What do you
Yeah.
have? I got you. Now is that the TV show that Josh Gates produced?
No, I think no, Josh Gates is Expedition X.
Expedition X. Okay.
And his show, I think Josh is kind of, turned more of the paranormal to the entertainment as than he used to be, cuz on his show Destination Truth, he'd be in the thick of it doing experiments, explaining why he's doing the experiments. Jaleel was with him. They would be going bouncing off each other different ideas of what they could be doing or why. And then you see Expedition X, and it's like this is just like Expedition Unknown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the same thing. You're not really delving in the paranormal. You're just giving the surface story of it, and you're only going after one, maybe two possible answers and ignoring everything else. And it's like, no, you can't. That's not a show. You can't,
Yeah.
go and say, oh, well, it wasn't this and it wasn't that. So, it must be this. It's like, you guys left us so much on the table.
Yeah. Well, the thing I like about Destination Truth is Josh always left it up to the viewers. He never said this is that, that is this. He always says, "What do you think?" And he left it at that. I mean,
Right.
he.
But yeah, but what I'm meaning is like Josh, when he was doing Destination Truth, say they were in a forest where no trees were growing, he would be like going, okay, is there
Oh yeah,
something with the air? Is there something with the temperature? Is there something with the ground? They were doing all these different experiments at once. And then at
yeah.
the end, he would, like you're saying, say, well, with all this evidence, we have no proof why this is the way it is, but there's still more that could be done. So, I'm leaving it to you guys to pick up
Right.
where I left off and see what you're going to get. And I liked some of the episodes where he would go back to a location and go, oh, well, so and so is here and they found this. And they'd
Hmm.
open up that avenue. And then that would open up another. And then they'd be like, well, we still don't know. But again, it's up to you. Where the modern shows are like, yes, this is haunted. It's like, really, what's your definitive proof on that?
Right. Now, I do believe Josh was probably one of the first paranormal investigators to go to the island of haunted dolls.
Yeah.
I think he was the first one to go there because I've never even heard of it until he went
Well,
there.
technically, he was the first to go on TV, but he wasn't the first there because little known fact is, in order to get permission to film his episode there, he had to get permission from Zach Baggins. He
Oh,
owns
really?
the island of the dolls in
Interesting.
Mexico. So you had to get permission from him to film and do an episode. So I'm sure Zach investigated it, and that's why he, it had something happen, and that's why he bought it and now pretty much owns it. That's what I heard. And, I don't have a bill of sale to prove that he owns the island, but the source that told me, has no reason to lie.
Right, right,
And
right.
so I'm like, until I, get proof otherwise, I, believe my
I'm,
source. And I
I'm
don't
just
like state definitively Zach owns it. I say, this is what I heard.
okay.
So it's like, if he doesn't, I'm not saying he does. I'm just explaining where I heard and my take on it. And so don't like come at me and being like, you said Zach owns this and no, he doesn't. I'm like, I didn't
Hey,
say I had proof he owned it. I said I
right,
theorize he owns it.
right, right, right. Mike, let me ask you. I got two questions I would like to ask you. The first question is: Should be should paranormal teams have bylaws in their organizations? And the second question is: With all the stuff that are going on in the world, all the evidence that we as paranormal investigators have provided to the paranormal community and to the science world, why come we have not been asked to sit at the scientific community big round table? I think that it's time for us to. I think there's time for somebody that to come in to represent for us, just like everybody else uh, that are sitting at that table. They're representing somebody in their profession and in their community as whatever that they do. So why is that we're not sitting at that table yet?
So to answer the first question, should they have bylaws? I feel like that's kind of a loaded question because technically, I feel like I want to say yes because that way everyone's on the same page, everyone's in congruency, all energy towards the same result. But I don't agree with, you know, if the bylaw states like, because you're a part of this team, we own your evidence because you did it as this team. That I don't agree with because one, you know, unless this team is paying you, I feel like you don't own any rights to me personally. And the second you try to claim that, I'm like, I'll hit the door. I want that freedom to leave. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to have to go through the bylaw system of proving I feel this way and this is why I want to leave and have the team go yes or no. I'm like, I want that freedom. But I feel like there though there does need to be guidelines that everyone follows. Like, I'm not going to go on an investigation and cause drama, or unnecessarily, or I'm not going to claim something happened that never happened. I'm going to keep the integrity of the investigation. That, I would say, yes, those kind of laws need to be in place, but not laws of the evidence you gather is owned by the team, because that way, how do we share, what our experience is? Like, on an interview, I can't sit there and say, oh, yeah, I went to this site and I got this great photo of an orb, or I got a great photo of a shadow person. Well, can you show us? No, it's proprietary to the team. That to me is like goes against pair unity.
Mm-hmm.
If we're building a community, we got to be able to share our stuff and not worry about, oh, well, I got to reach out to this person and see if it's okay. That's where I'm like, no, I don't want that type of bylaw. So that's why I say the question's kind of loaded, is because there's a twofold to it.
Oh yeah. I ran across some teams they do have those in place. And the first rule, number one, is if you decide to leave the organization, you cannot join another organization for 6 months to a year.
That's ridiculous.
6 months to a year. Uh, is it fair for that to take away? It seems like they're punishing someone for taking away for what they love to do because they do not agree on what's happening on a certain organization. So the organization is going to fire back and say, okay, if you disagree with us and you decide to leave my organization, you cannot join another organization for 6 months to a year. That doesn't sound fair to me.
No, and to be honest, I doubt anyone's even watching, because who's going to sit there and have a teammate that goes, okay, how many days does this person have left on their sentence? Nobody's going to be watching that, in all fairness, I feel.
Shit.
And on the grounds of that, I would say, say I was on an investigation with you and we caught somebody planting evidence or faking something, and we called them out on it, and they said, well, you guys were wrong, you guys treated me, you guys accused me of this wrongfully, I'm leaving. In those grounds, I would say, yeah, you need to take time out of the field to assess. And if I had friends and other teams that, they were like, hey, this person left and, your team and ours over here now, what's, is that okay? I feel it's within our right to say, it's fine if you want to use them, but just be aware this is what we caught him doing. He denied it, but, we witnessed it. So
Yeah.
take them or not, that's up to you, but that's where we're leaving it. And, that way, but when I hear people are like, go, oh, so and so did this, and here's the evidence of it. We screenshotted it and we saved all of this. I'm like, really, people? That's a little bit extreme of kind of like almost borderline petty. Like, you're creating drama within drama that doesn't need to be there. I mean,
Right.
if somebody caused an issue, you got rid of them, you stated this is why you got rid of them, that's all that needs to be said, in my opinion. I don't need to see the documentation that shows what
This and
happened
that,
and
yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Now, But on the flip side, if he did something that caused harm to somebody inadvertently, I would want to see the evidence to be like, what was it? Is it something we could help him not to repeat and learn from? Or is this like a pattern for this person? In which case, need to get the hell away from this person because got to put the safety of the team first.
Right.
And so those grounds evidence I think is warranted. But if it's a conversation, I don't feel like conversations need to be screenshotted and shared around because I know from my experience, and you probably, Terry, are the same way. What I'm thinking and saying doesn't always translate on what I'm typing.
Right.
Like, I could be really upset about something and typing, yeah, I'm okay. And you're like, okay, he's okay. I'm not really okay, but you're
Exactly.
seeing I'm okay. So you go, okay, move on.
Right.
And so written context can be taken out of context. Like you could say, like you could be in a bad mood and type, man, I wish this person disappeared. And somebody screenshots that and something happens to that person. They're like, hey, you wished that. And you're like, I was in a bad mood. I didn't wish them harm. That was not my intention. I
Right.
regretted writing that. And you see, later on, I apologized for it, but you don't show that on your screenshot. And it's like, yeah, so you're purposefully making this to look like this. And so, yeah. But, yeah, that's like a show in itself, that topic.
It's a big show.
And your second question, I feel like I can actually answer this in a really profound way that's going to surprise you because I've had a couple of shows about this. And is the paranormal going to be on the same table level and the big table as modern science? And the answer to me is no, we're not, because science is going to have to catch up to us to understand what's going on. And so we're going to be the table that they're coming to. And what that looks like is like I had a guest last night who's starting a learning program where he's taking the people in the science field and putting people in the spiritual field and mixing the two and saying if we're going to evolve and grow to our full potential, we have to blend the science and the spiritual into one, in which case, when we reach that level of awareness, he coined the phrase of the example as a podcast host, I could be interviewing someone on the screen who's on the other side.
Interesting.
And so I'm like, wow, that'd be really great and that'd be cool. But I don't feel like we can get there if we join the science table because the science table is so ruled in its ways that we lose the biggest part of what's the paranormal to join that table. And so that's why I say they'd actually come to ours because the spiritual table of the paranormal side already is walking in the science field. We blend the two using the equipment we use, using the techniques that we use. So they're going to be coming to us, in my opinion, to say, how do we do this? How do you blend the, say, hypothesis theorem in the paranormal? And it's like, well, you got to get yourself out of the box that says this is the way science works and go, okay, Now we got to take ourselves out of the box that says this is how a paranormal has to be done
Mm.
and look at how can both work together. And I feel like the paranormal field, as messed up and drama filled right now, is actually, I have been witnessing undergoing that change already. I've seen a lot of investigators who were kind of being all high and mighty in the field now turning around and saying, hey, I'm glad I took a break. I needed to take a break. Now that I've refreshed, I want to go and approach the paranormal this way. And it's like they're becoming more community oriented. They're not the I've done this 30 years, this is how it's done method anymore. And others who have been asking this and talking about this, the community rebuilding and glorifying are being heard more, and more people are gravitating in and saying, yeah, we're going a more community based. So I would say that's why the paranormal field will be the table to join, because we're adapting and we're already starting the process of seeing our mistakes, learning from them, and going into the next phase of the paranormal to where it's more community and less of the, oh, I've done this, my team's done this for this long and my team sets the pace for this area or that area. And it's more of, hey, yeah, you're doing this. That's really cool how you're doing that. Can you show us how to do that over here?
Mm.
And
Okay.
it's becoming more, that's what I've been witnessing. I can't say it's on a huge level,
Mhm.
like the whole community is doing this, but I've seen the little spark, and I feel like it is resonating now.
Okay. Uh, as me and you get older, and I don't know how long I'm gonna be a paranormal investigator, but I do know there are some that are the future paranormal investigators. They're already here.
They
They're
are.
they're in diapers now. They are walking around us at the grocery store, and so on and so on. What do you think the next generation of paranormal investigators are going to be like? And what do you think? What type of equipment that you think they're going to have to make themselves uh, a good team? I mean, because we know that a good team. I mean, besides your basic senses that we have, there are man. So
Well,
hell, I can't even think about the next generation of equipment
yeah,
because it can
I've
be
actually thought about this. And so to me, the next generation paranormal investigators, they're not going to be using equipment like we used. Our equipment is going to be like so antiquated to them, and
mm,
being like, how did you guys ever prove anything with this type of equipment? Because let's be honest, like an ovulus, we can't prove it's a spirit speaking through it because it's a database of words
right.
and it's running on an algorithm. So, how can we definitively say? We can't. The next generation of investigators, I feel like their method of investigating and their style is going to be more experiential, to where they share what they experienced. Everybody will probably experience it in one way or another, the same experience, because, you can't take out the human element of, you put 10 people in a room and, all 10 people are not going to see and remember every detail the same. So, that's always going to be there. But the difference is they are not going to be, I think, so on, I have to get documented proof of this, this, and this to be an investigator. My story will be enough where it'll be a generation of, I saw a spirit, and people are going to be like, you saw a spirit? That's really cool. What did they look like? What was it like? And not well, where's your proof of it? That's where I think our generation lost its way, is we got too caught up in the scientific proof that we lost what it means to be a paranormal investigator. And I'm not saying, science isn't needed. I'm just saying science is one aspect of several that we give too much attention to, because an example of that, of what I mean, is I've talked to people and they'll say, "Oh, I've never had a paranormal experience." And I go, "Really?" And they're like, "Yeah, I guess there's something wrong with me." I go, "Well, what makes you think you never had a paranormal experience?" "Well, I've never experienced this or that." And I go, "Well, have you ever smelled like a scent of a flower when there's no flowers around? Or have you smelled, like cherry tobacco when there's nobody smoking around you?" "Well, yeah, that's a paranormal experience."
Deja
"What do you
vu.
mean that's a paranormal experience?" "Oh my God, I had a paranormal experience." So that's where I say their generation is going to be different from ours, is they're going to be more open to it. So they don't need the documentation as much as we do, because we're so busy trying to become accepted as a mainstream science that people are not giving some evidence credit towards stuff, and everybody's all, "Nope, that's not true evidence," or there's too much bickering between how do we prove the validity of the field, instead of let's better the field.
Right. Wow, that's okay. Uh Man, I was talking to a gentleman about 2 weeks ago. He is a what is he? He delivers babies for a living. Talking to him at the bar at Buffalo Wild Wings, and I was asking him a question. He's like, "Man, can," and I just happened, "Do you believe that all these babies that you are delivering," and I think he's probably delivering maybe 10 to 15 a month. Uh, and he's like, "Man, these babies that I'm delivering are going to be smarter than the babies that I delivered 10 years ago." And I'm like, "How is that even possible?"
Because we're
And
different.
yeah, and he was like, "Man, the way things are evolving now," and he didn't say it to a T, but I kind of got that a little hint about what he was saying. He was saying for I think each generation that every child is born, they are being able to, uh, their minds are being able to tap into things that it's not much. I think he says like a half percent per generation. So the babies that are born now, you're tapping into your mental capacity at like a half percent. The next generation, it'll go up to like 2%. The next generation after that, it's just going to keep going half percent and half percent until it keeps going up to
Yeah.
however it is. And
Well, let me put it to you this way, Terry. I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to make this point clear. Um, while we're on that, is look at the generation who was born, say, in the 60s, the flower child era.
Mhm.
They were laid back. We had the 70s where they were laid back and music took a different turn. Well, the 70s became the 80s. Free love became, a different version of the 60s and the 80s. It's known as the era of love. Well, then there was the 90s where we had cell phones becoming more prevalent versus pagers. And we're the generation that had the pagers is like, how does this phone work? There's no cords. But the
Right.
generation of the cell phone said, you flip it open, you dial, you're done. That's all there is to it. You just got to make sure it's charged all the time. Then the next generation, we had iPads and little iPods of music. And we're like, how does this work? And their generation is you just plug it in, download, go. And then you had the laptop generation. And then there's you see, and so every generation where you look at music and technology changes, that generation knows how to use it. Where the prior generation is stuck looking at it and going, I don't get it, let alone two generations back that's looking at like a computer and going, how is this little device allowing me to talk to a person on this screen that's not there? They can't fathom that. But the generation that's now, it's like, well, my screen doesn't do that. Oh, well, you got to go click this button. You got to go into this setting, and boom, it's done. I mean, look at your family. I'm sure your kids have fixed many of things for you and made it look
Oh
super
yeah.
easy. And you're like, how did you know this?
Super easy. And now I don't know if that percentage, I mean, if you look at it, Mike, 2% of using your brain capacity, people think that's not a lot.
Oh, it's a
But
lot.
you're able to do some of the weirdest things. And each generation, 2%, next generation, you get that half, then the other generation, that's actually 3% of using your brain capacity. That is a lot. And
Yeah.
just can you imagine 10 generations from now on what they'll be able to do with this?
Oh,
Dude,
yeah.
I mean, okay, let's say for those guys, I was just watching YouTube about this guy can do remote viewing. Now, in order for him to do remote viewing using his mind, dude, can you imagine what capacity his brain is at in order for that to happen? I mean, he's got to be above everybody else to even close his eyes or put that mask on and remote view. He's watching me and I'm over there and he's watching me and he's here at the house.
The thing about remote viewing is, yes, it's amazing that they can see things at a distance, but there's no reason like you and I can't remote view. The only difference is I don't practice and I don't, purposefully look to an area and go, what do I see? Write it down or draw what I'm seeing, and practice and doing it. So to me, it seems harder and more impossible. Whereas the person who's, you know, this is their field and so to speak, or their hobby, their interest in it. So they're spending the time practicing it, learning it. And going, yeah, I can close my eyes for 2 minutes and I can draw you a picture of this place that's 2,000 miles away. And you can put it next to the place and it looks almost identical. Well, yeah, that's a really cool skill that he's developed, but it's also because he was open to it and interested in it to where, like, you and I were like, yeah, that's interesting, but I don't have the interest level to pursue it. So, yeah, I'm going to stay on the level of maybe I can do it, maybe not.
Right?
But it amazes me you can. And so, yeah, that's the thing we also have to look at is a lot of these abilities or gifts or whatever you want to call them that people do, a lot of them are not, as like supernatural in skill level as it appears.
Mhm.
And we could all do it, but we choose not to subconsciously or consciously. And so it creates this aura of, ooh, this person can do that. They're better and they're at a higher level than, but they're really not. And that's the amazing thing that I've had with a lot of my guests who are like really experts in their field. And I'm like, before going on a show, I'm always saying to them, I can't believe, you're actually coming on my show. This is like, I'm in like, oh my God mode. And they're like, just take a breath. You're no different than I am. We're all
Right?
just doing our own thing. And so, yeah. And that's the thing that I think we forget about is because we're so used to the class system of I'm here like Greenhorn.
Mm-hmm.
So and so has 3 seasons, so they're here. This person has 7 seasons, so they're here. When in reality, we're all here,
Yep. No matter
but our
what.
mind puts us below someone when we shouldn't.
Great answer. Hey, that's a great answer there. Uh, man, it's this world, dude. Like we were talking earlier, man. I being here, it's bad enough, like you say, when the cell phone came on, dude, I felt so out of place.
Oh
When the
yeah,
laptop came in, I felt so because I didn't know what the hell, what is this? Hey,
yeah,
not and the craziest thing is not seeing kids with backpacks coming home from school. That really messed me up.
yeah. Or what even is funnier is remember when Wi-Fi came and it's like devices started accessing the internet without a cord. It's like, where's the cord that connects to the web? How is this
Mm.
connecting to the web? And it's like,
Hey,
wait a minute.
yeah, that was crazy because you got to hear because back in the day, man, you got to hear that.
Yeah.
Oh, that drove me fucking crazy.
And it was like, you could walk away, get a drink, and come back. And it was like, oh, we're finally connected. It's like,
Finally, after 3.5 hours.
but yeah. But Terry, we're actually at an hour and 50 minutes.
Oh, that's great, dude. Great conversation, man.
It was. We'll have to do this again.
Hey, anytime, brother. Anytime. I'm always available, especially for you, my brother. Especially for
Well,
you.
same for
Uh,
you. And I want to give you a couple of minutes or, as much time as you want
okay.
to promote your shows and what you're doing and where people can find you.
All right, guys. Hey, for those of you that know me, my name is Terry with NSPS TV Paranormal and NSPS TV Paranormal Podcast Show. Uh, You can find us on many different platforms. A lot of them you guys don't know about, and some of them you do. You can find me as NSPS TV Paranormal Podcast. You can find me on Kick, Rumble, Instagram, Twitch. And if you guys are abroad or in the UK or in Japan, just look me up over there, and I'll be on over there. I'm on 3 different Facebook pages. If you guys want to look me up and talk to me personally, you can look me up under Terry Crozier. Or if you guys want to see what I'm doing paranormal wise, you can look me up at NSPS TV Paranormal. Or you want to join me on one of the podcasts, or you can look me up at NSPS TV Paranormal Podcast. Man, everything's linked in to each other. If you looked up one, I guarantee you'll find me. Oh, and I also got a YouTube page. I got like 5 different YouTube pages. So if you want to look me up, just hit NSPS TV. Everything pops up. And if you really want to, sit down, you got a session or something really personal, and you really want to talk to me, you can email me at CrozierTerry87 at yahoo.com, or you can call me directly at 512-988-7698. Where there's a will, there's a way for you guys to contact me.
Wow, I'm sitting here thinking, wow, that actually works. You just gave out your number and somebody's calling you.
Yeah, that's my son. He's probably up to something, needs some money. But anyway, guys, yes. I normally podcast on either, if I'm not investigating Fridays, I'm usually podcasting Fridays, Saturdays, and especially Sunday. Sunday evening podcast is called In the Lion's Den with NSPS TV Paranormal Podcast. I like that show because it brings out a lot in me. And it's a Sunday, so I usually come on, have fun, like to pick your mind, generate a lot of conversation with everybody and just have fun. Fridays, normally, like I say, I'm usually investigating. Saturday, same thing. Come on and have fun and enjoy the moment. Everything is not really serious. Oh my God.
And on that note, I can say that is so true from my experience. And most of, if not all, the links that he mentioned are in the description. So you can look them up there and go from there. But thank you, Terry, for joining me on this exciting episode. And thank you for the wonderful conversation.
Yes, sir.
And we have a few minutes or a couple of minutes, and I want to ask the one last question that a lot of people like when I ask is, from your experience in life, from wherever you want to take it from, what is a golden nugget that you would like to leave the audience with?
The golden nugget, guys. Don't take everything serious. Sometimes it might be, you might think that it is, or your mind might think that it's serious, but it's really not. Sit back, take a deep breath, and just how can I say it? Just feel the moment, because if it's not serious, then don't stress out about it. I mean, it's really not what you think it is. Everybody try to live a simple life the best way that you can. Don't live past your means. Don't try to live with the Joneses. Just enjoy life for what it is, and because you never know, at the wind, it can be taken away from you. So just enjoy it.
Very well said, and I agree. And so thank you to everyone watching this episode, and wherever you are in the world, Make it a great day, afternoon, evening. If you're asleep, feel free to wake up and watch this show or Terry's show. I love putting that shameless plug at the end because, host prerogative. But yeah, and when you take each day on, like Terry said, don't take everything so seriously. Take a step back, take a breath, and things that seem insurmountable may start to look like a little pebble on the ground, and you can just step over and done.
Keep on going.
Yeah, just
keep on going, my friends.
The stuff that's worth sweating, and you'll know what that is. So thank you to everyone. And so from all of us to you, have a great night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Peace. All right, Mike, you're going to have a good one, man. And I appreciate being on the show. I really do.
Yes, thank you. And here we go.